Okay, so this tutorial will take you through the November 2009 website element. This is the exam paper for the November 2009 and I'm starting at instruction 26 for the website section. I have my November 2009 paper 3 files here on my desktop with all of these elements that are required to have been downloaded in that file box. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my website to link to this root folder. So I'm going to define my site, and my site is always going to look in this root folder to find the location of images. It's really important when you set your website up for the first time that you define the site, identifying where you want it to look for its files, and you don't change that. Changing your site location or even moving this folder later on will cause problems for you to be able to come back to the website and edit it further. So to begin with, I'm going to open up Dreamweaver, and as Dreamweaver opens, it will have down to the right hand side here the most recent site that I was working on, which was the 2010 snowboard site. So I'm going to set up a new site, a new site, and I'm going to call this November 2009. And that's where I go and find the root folder for where the location is. Local site folder, open the desktop file, it's on my desktop, and it is called November 2009 paper 3 files. So that is the location that I want just here. I'll just extend that. Yeah, that was the 2009. Good. Choose. Okay, and save. And now I notice that all of my new files have opened here. Okay, so back to my instructions. Download the files. Yep, got that. Open a suitable software package and open the web page n9offers.htm so that it can be edited. Now remember, when working in websites, quite often the first task that it asks you to do is to edit an image, which means that you don't open it in Dreamweaver but in Photoshop. But this instruction here is asking me to open a web page, so I am going to open it in Dreamweaver. Okay, so n9offers.htm. So in my Dreamweaver, I'm going to look through my files, and there is the n9offers.htm, and if I simply double click on it, the file will open. I'm looking at it in split view so I can see the design and the code at the bottom here, and I'm not in live, I'm in design view of this. If I want to see more of my code, I can simply drag this option up and I can scroll through both sections. Okay. Attach the style sheet n9styles.css to this web page. Now remember, a style sheet is a template that works behind the website and tells the website what each of the different types of text defaults should look like, what the background should look like, etc, etc. So in order to add a new CSS, what I want to be is I want to look over in my menu on my right hand side. I'm looking for my CSS designer window. If you can't see this, you can go to Windows, make sure that we're in Dreamweaver and not Adobe Acrobat, Windows, and you can click the tick box for CSS designer so that you can see this. Now I want to add a source, so I'm just going to press the plus button next to source and I'm going to attach an existing CSS file. I'm going to go and browse for it, looking in the folder with everything else, so everything is still saved in exactly the same place. There's November 2009 files. Okay, n9style.css, and I'm going to open and press OK, and that is now applied to my page, and you can see that that has had now an effect on the background and on the fonts of the page. So my next instruction after that says to replace the text candidate name, centre number, candidate number with your name, centre number and candidate number. That's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to have last edited by Miss Gettle, centre number 1, 2, 3, 4. Now notice as I am highlighting this section in the text, it also highlights this element of text in the code. So if I want to edit things directly in the code, I can actually come down here and I can actually type over in the code and it will still affect the design up here. Like so. And it will change it up there as well. Next instruction says to change this line of code from style H4 to the paragraph style. So if I highlight this particular element, I can see in the code down here that the tags attached are the H4 tags. So if I want to change that to a paragraph tag, I'm going to delete H4 and replace it with a P. This means that this type of text will now follow the paragraph design. Now remember, there's lots of defaults of text, H1, H2, H3, H4, all the way to H6, and then P, which represents paragraph. So those are all of the different defaults of text that are designed in the template. Okay, so this is now the same as my paragraph text over here. The next instruction asks me to change the width of both tables so that they each fill the width of any window in any web browser. Okay, so when I look at my design here, I can only see one table. So I may need to go down into my code so I can see this a little bit more clearly, because clearly one of the tables is either inlaid on top of this or it has an invisible border around it. If I scroll up to the top of the page, I can see that there is instruction for table 1, table with a width. And if I scroll down, I can see that's where table 1 closes and that's where table 2 opens. So I just need to be familiar with reading these codes. Okay, so it's asked me to set the width of both tables so that they each fill the width of any window in any web browser. So instead of setting it to pixels, I want to set these to percentage. So I'll start with table 1, which I'm now going to set as a width to 100%. And the same for table 2, with a width to 100%. And now when I select up here, you can see that the width of the table has expanded to fill the design of this particular page. Then it asks me to merge two cells that contain the word adhesive so that they become a single cell containing only the word adhesives. Okay, so these two cells here, if I highlight both of them, I can right click over the top, and under the table options I can find the button that says merge cells. I don't need it to contain the word adhesives twice, just once will do. There we go. And the same for the next instruction. It says make sure that this new cell uses 44% of the table's width. So with adhesives selected, I can see which cell that is. It's this one. So TD is the code for the cell. Okay, so I want to put in the TD width equals 44%. Okay, back to the instructions. Merge the two cells that contain the words files so that they become a single cell, and also make sure that this new cell uses 44% of the table width. So I'm going to go over here to files, select these two cells, right click, table, merge cells, delete the second version of files, and again down here in my code I can see my width settings, and I'm going to set this also to 44%. This one appears to have defaulted back to 75, so let's just edit that. Oh. Okay. There we go, both set to 44%. Perfect. Okay, next instruction is to set cell paddings for both to 4. So that's the spacing and the gaps in between cells, as well as the lines in between cells. So we want to set the cell padding to 4 and the cell spacing to 4. Okay. So ways to do this is, first of all, I can highlight the table, and by saying select table, I can then right click, and I can go into the table properties. So let's just check and see if that's opened the table properties. It has. Okay, so that was just simply by right clicking and selecting the table and then going down into the properties menu, and then the properties window opens. And here I can add my cell padding and my cell spacing. So I want to set both of those to 4. Okay, now notice what that actually does in the code is it adds the instruction cell padding equals 4 and cell spacing equals 4 after width in the table tag. So the other way I can do it for the other table is simply to copy that same section of code and go down to my second table, which is here, table width equals 100%, and paste that section of the code, and that will then impact the second table as well. Okay, so it then says set the table border of the top table to 0 and the table border of the bottom table to 2. So this one we'll do just in the code. Again, we scroll up. So we want the table border is going to be 0 for this one. So I'm going to type in border equals 0 for the top one. And for the second one, I'm going to set it to border equals 2. Okay, wonderful. Right, so at this stage, I'm going to save what I've done. Command and S. I can always go and test what this looks like in the web browser by going to File and Preview in Browser and opening it up in either Google Chrome or Safari to test. And notice this top table has no border now, okay, so I can't see the lines in between the cells, but this bottom table has a nice thick border, a border of 2, okay. So carrying on with the next tutorial video, which will show you how to sort out your anchors so that you have a click here to return to the top of the page to take you to this section.